Hey everyone, it's Tomek from Soccer Bedtime Stories. If you enjoy our stories and think they are worth your hard-earned money, please consider supporting us on Buzzsprout at bit.ly/Soccer Bedtime Stories. That's bit.ly/Soccer Bedtime Stories. Or just look for us on Buzzsprout. Just $3 a month will give you special access to fan art, newsletters, shoutouts, and other community benefits. By supporting the show, you support us and allow us to keep our show ad-free and accessible for soccer-loving kids and adults around the globe. As always, we love to hear from you. Continue to reach out, leave reviews. Hope you enjoy the story. Sleep well and dream big, friend.
Hello, soccer friend. Tonight, we travel once again to the World Cup, a place where the grass is green and the crowds are loud, where flags fly high and every goal carries more than the sound of the ball hitting the net. Before we begin, we want to send a special shout out to our listeners tuning in from Mason, Michigan, Ravensby, Australia, Wallen Lake, Michigan, and Sandy Springs, Georgia. Make sure to follow Soccer Bedtime Stories in your podcast apps. That way, a new soccer adventure will be waiting for your family every Monday. Thank you for joining us from your corner of the soccer world. Don't forget to leave us a note and tell us where you are listening from. Your city might be part of our next story. Now let's settle in. Imagine a ball rolling across the bright green field. A player races toward it. One touch, one strike. The net ripples, the stadium erupts, and for a few breathless seconds the whole world watches. On the scoreboard, it is only a name and a number, but a World Cup goal rarely begins in that moment. Sometimes it begins with a flight that never took off. Sometimes it starts in a small Colombian town far from the stadium lights. Sometimes its path crosses a border as a family searches for safety. And sometimes it grows inside a child whose heart holds more than one country. In the opening weeks of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, 4 players followed 4 very different roads to soccer's biggest stage. Their goals carried the places where they were born, the countries where they grew, the families who guided them, and the choices they made to decide who they were. This is Once Upon a World Cup. The 4 journeys: Balogun, Quiñones, Irankunda, and Ayari. Folarin Balogun's American story began before he could walk, before he could kick a ball, and before he could know that his place of birth would one day help shape his future. His Nigerian parents were living in London, where his mother, Florence, traveled to New York while pregnant. She planned to visit her sister and return to England before the baby arrived. But when it was time to fly home, the airline would not let her board. She was too far along in her pregnancy and did not have the required medical clearance. So, the family stayed. On July 3rd, 2001, Folarin Jerry Balogun was born in Brooklyn. A few weeks later, his family returned to London. That was where he grew up and where soccer took hold of his imagination. On neighborhood fields and academy sessions, and eventually at Arsenal's famous Hale End Academy, Balogun began to look like an English soccer story. Yet, 3 doors stood open before him. England had raised and developed him. Nigeria connected him to his parents, his heritage, and his family name. The United States had given him his birthplace during that unexpected stay in Brooklyn. For years, he did not have to close any of those doors. Balogun represented England at the youth level. He also spent time with the United States Youth Program. As he grew, so did the questions around him. Which country would he choose when the decision finally mattered? His club career brought that moment closer. At Arsenal, first-team minutes were difficult to find. A loan to Middlesbrough introduced him to the weight and speed of senior soccer. Then came a season with Reims in France, and everything changed. Balogun scored again and again. He slipped behind defenders with perfectly timed runs and finished chances with calm feet. Bigger clubs began to look his way, and national teams paid close attention. England offered prestige, but had a crowded group of forwards. Nigeria remained tied to his family. The United States saw a young striker who could become an important part of its future. His American citizenship opened the door, but the decision meant more than a birth certificate. The United States offered him an important role, a young team growing together, and the possibility of playing a World Cup on home soil. In May 2023, Balogun made his choice. He chose the United States. 3 years later, the home World Cup arrived. The United States opened against Paraguay. The crowd wanted a spark, while Paraguay hoped to slow the match and make the hosts feel every nervous second. Balogun did not wait. One run, one touch, one finish. Goal. Before the first half could settle, he struck again. Two goals, a 4-1 victory, a match transformed from pressure into promise. The baby born in Brooklyn because his mother could not fly home had returned as the striker the United States needed. His American story began unexpectedly. His World Cup story began by choice. Julián Quiñones began his journey far from the grand stadiums and bright television lights of the World Cup. He was born in Magui, Payan, in Colombia's Nariño department. Colombia was the country of his earliest memories, his first dreams, and the first soccer world that knew his name. Then, as a teenager, his professional journey carried him north. Tigres brought Quiñones to Mexico, and the move changed the shape of his life. Success did not arrive immediately. He had to move, wait, fight for minutes, and prove himself. At Venados and Lobos Buap, he showed that he could score. At Tigres, he learned how difficult it was to earn a place at a club filled with talent. Then Atlas gave him room to rise. The club had waited decades for a league championship. Quiñones helped in that long wait and then helped Atlas win again. In one remarkable stretch, he became a champion and part of the club's history. Success carried him to Club America, where the lights shone brighter and the expectations grew louder. By then, Mexico was no longer simply the country where Quiñones worked. This is where he had grown into a professional, faced his hardest tests, lifted trophies, and became known. That made the national team question complicated. Colombia remained part of his identity. He had been born there, had represented the country at youth level, but Mexico had become part of his story too. In 2023, after years in Mexican soccer, Quiñones completed the naturalization process and chose El Tri. The decision brought debate. Some people questioned it. Others saw a player who had given years to Liga MX and had earned the right to wear the shirt. Quiñones could have spent months trying to answer every voice. Instead, he played. Mexico opened the 2026 World Cup against South Africa at the Azteca Stadium. The stands shimmered with green and the noise rolled around the old stadium like thunder. 8 minutes into the match, the chance came. The ball found Quiñones. He finished. Goal. The first goal of the tournament belonged to him. For a moment, every debate disappeared beneath the roar of the crowd. A player born in Colombia and shaped by Mexican club soccer had opened Mexico's home World Cup at the Azteca. Mexico won 2-0. The goal did not erase the country where Quiñones was born. It added another chapter to the life he had built in the country he now represented. One touch, one finish, and one new chapter. Nestory Irankunda's World Cup goal began long before he ever touched a ball. It began with his parents, Gideon and Dafrosa, leaving Burundi during a civil war that had made life unsafe for thousands of families. They crossed into Tanzania, not in search of soccer or fame, but of protection, stability, and a place where their children could have a future. That was where Nestory was born. In 2006, in Kigoma, Tanzania, he entered the world as part of a Burundian refugee family. His first home was not a famous soccer city or academy town. It was a place shaped by waiting, uncertainty, and hope. When Nestory was still a baby, his family was resettled in Australia. They first arrived in Perth and later moved to Adelaide. There, childhood had room to stretch out. There were schools, local clubs, older brothers to chase, and patches of grass where the boy could discover the game. Australia became the place where his family could breathe again, and where a child born into displacement could grow and dream. Irankunda came through local clubs in South Australia with a style that made people stop and watch. He was fast, direct, and fearless. He attacked open spaces as if he could see before anyone else did. When he ran at defenders, the field seemed to tilt toward him. Adelaide United gave him his opportunity. Still a teenager, he began scoring in the A-League. His goals arrived with power, pace, and personality. He was young, but he never played small. He played as if the next chance were already calling him forward. Europe noticed. Bayern Munich signed him. The move confirmed what Australian soccer already knew. Irankunda possessed rare speed, courage, and force. His family story connected him to several places. He was born in Tanzania to Burundian parents. Australia was the country that gave his family safety, raised him, trained him, and placed him on his professional path. When he wore the Socceroos shirt, he represented the place where his family's second chance had become his first opportunity. Then came Turkey. Australia needed belief. Turkey had talent, rhythm, and experience. The opening minutes felt tight. Every touch mattered, and every mistake threatened to grow. In the 27th minute, Irankunda changed the match. He scored. Australia led. At 20 years old, he became the youngest World Cup scorer in Australian history. The record sounded simple. The story behind it was not. The goal carried Burundi, Tanzania, Perth, Adelaide, and every quiet step his family had taken toward a safer life. It carried the weight of parents who had crossed borders before their son crossed into the penalty area. Australia won 2-0. For the Socceroos, it was a strong beginning. For Irankunda, it was something deeper. A child born between countries had scored for the country that gave his family a future. Yasin Ayari's international path did not begin with a late decision. He was born in Solna, Sweden. He grew up in Swedish soccer and came through AIK, one of the country's major clubs. Sweden trained him, selected him, and gave him a path from academy player to senior international. But his family made one World Cup match very different. Ayari's father is Tunisian and his mother is Moroccan. His soccer life belonged to Sweden, but his family's story stretched across North Africa. Tunisia was therefore more than another name on the schedule. It was connected to his father, his family, and part of his own identity. The tension did not need to be loud. It waited quietly beneath the match. For Sweden, the game was an opportunity to begin the tournament with confidence. For Ayari, it carried that additional layer. Across the field stood players wearing the flag of his father's heritage. In the stands, Tunisian supporters sang for a country that met something inside his own home. Then the whistle blew. Feeling had to make room for responsibility. Ayari moved the ball, found pockets of space, pressed and waited for the moment the match would offer him. Then it came. He scored. The Swedish supporters rose. Ayari did not race away. He did not shout into the night or turn the goal into a grand display. He stood still. Later, he scored again, and again, he did not celebrate. Sweden won 5-1, and Ayari's 2 goals became one of the stories of the opening round. He had done his job for Sweden fully and without hesitation. Yet, by choosing restraint, he also showed respect for Tunisia and for the family ties that made the moment so complicated. His silence did not weaken his commitment. It deepened the moment. In a tournament of flags, songs, and roaring crowds, Ayari reminded everyone that some stories are carried quietly. After the opening matches, the scoring charts looked simple. Balogun had 2 goals, Ayari had 2, Quiñones and Irankunda each had 1. But a chart could never hold their full stories. That is why the goals mattered beyond the scoreboard. Together, they showed how connected the soccer world really is. A player may wear one flag over his heart while carrying many places within it. One country may have given him his birthplace, another his family traditions, and another the field where his dreams took shape. None of those truths had to erase the others. That is part of what makes soccer so beautiful. A ball can roll through a city street, a schoolyard, a backyard, a refugee camp, or a packed stadium, and its language remains the same. Run, pass, shoot, dribble. The World Cup reminds us that people's stories rarely fit neatly beneath a single flag. Families move, cultures meet, countries become connected in ways no scoring chart could ever explain. Balogun, Quiñones, Irankunda, and Ayari did more than score goals. For a few unforgettable moments, they carried their families' journeys onto soccer's biggest stage and showed us just how beautifully woven together our world can be. Sleep well and dream big, soccer friends. Thanks for joining us under the stars. If tonight's story brought you joy, here are 3 simple ways to keep the magic going. 1. Become a bedtime baller. Support the podcast for the cost of a stadium churro or a match day snack at soccerbedtimestories.com. You can find the link in the show notes as well. 2. Follow us on Instagram at MySoccerBedtime. We'd love to see where you listen, who your favorite players are, or even what bedtime looks like at your house. 3. Read The Biggest Soccer Adventure So Far. Grab a Soccer Mystery Chronicles, The Haunting of St. Mary's Stadium, and dive into the world of haunted tunnels, hidden relics, and brave sisters solving the game's greatest mystery. With your support, we'll keep telling the stories that help kids and adults fall asleep dreaming of goals, teamwork, and faraway stadiums. Sleep well and dream big, soccer friends.